to remind my family that I'm doing this.
Hi folks, can see a lot of you joining for this, the second webinar of the day, Revision 2020, Reducing Membership Churn as Renewals Occur. So we'll be underway just after 4 o'clock once we have everyone with us. So welcome, and we'll be underway shortly. Hi to those just joining, welcome to this TPC webinar. We'll be underway just after 4 o'clock. If you haven't already, coming up tomorrow, Lucy Costello from Ticket Solve got some really interesting trends on micro donations they're picking up between the island of Ireland and the UK, along with some tips, tricks, and things they're seeing. So if you do donations, well worth a look. Friday, Bruce Mayhew has got a very interesting talk about managing teams as we get used to having social distancing or being away from the office. So he's going to be talking about how to manage your team more effectively with things like Zoom and Slack and the phone, and talking about some of those tips and tricks. So Bruce Mayhew, 2 o'clock on Friday, well worth registering for that one. But we'll be underway very shortly with this afternoon's webinar. Okay, so it's just after 4 o'clock. I think we'll make a start for this webinar this afternoon. It's our first double header, 2 presenters today for reducing membership churn as renewals occur. And it's great to welcome Erin and Kate from Tessitura, who will be with us this afternoon. And it's our first real look at membership. A lot of us sell tickets, but of course membership as well. If you haven't been on one of these before, a bit of housekeeping. Will be pretty tight to 60 minutes. We are recording, and this video will be available afterwards on demand or on our YouTube channel. We're going to have a presentation from Erin and Kate, perhaps a bit of discussion depending on how the Q&A is building up. If you haven't used Zoom webinar before, I know we're all becoming experts. At the top or the bottom of your screen, there'll be a toolbar there with a Q&A bubble. Hit that, pop your question in. You get the chance to comment and upvote other people's questions. So if you see a question that's particularly relevant, give it a thumbs up and I'll get it towards the top of the pile. So without further ado, over to our first double presentation, Erin and Kate.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We are really both very glad to be here to talk about this topic today. I know many of you from my time in the EU, working in the EU with our member organizations, and Tessitura is really honored to contribute this session to the Ticketing Professionals Conference. And Andrew, really congratulations on an outstanding virtual lineup. It's been fantastic. So to get us started, we want to poll you with 2 questions, sort of a bit of an icebreaker. Firstly, have you started offering a digital offer? Have you created some form of digital offering for your members that you did not have prior to this pandemic? And I tend to narrate these polls as they come in, much like a horse race or something. So, you know, it's actually neck and neck. We've got some yes, we've got some no, but we were in the process of creating some. Actually, at this moment, it's pretty cleanly split between yes and no, with everyone trying to move over to the yes side. So I'm going to end that poll, and then I'm just going to share these results. Yeah. So right now, of the ones who were quick on the vote, there's another question coming up, and you actually, so you'll have your chance to participate. This is really quite interesting because we are starting to see a new form of digital offering for members that we didn't have prior to this pandemic. And then secondly, we have another question for you, which is, have you started thinking about your members? Do you have a campaign plan for identifying and renewing members who have lapsed during this period of closure? Yes. Wow, that was a very strong yes in the beginning. It was, all the yeses are like, woo, we've got a plan. So, all right then. So yes, lots of campaign planning for identifying and renewing members. Wow, this is terrific. And then a lot of people that are in process with this. So this is very good. You know, my experience is I was a fundraiser for almost 20 years here in the States, but then the past 5 years I've been working quite a lot across the EU particularly, and in the States obviously, in our strategy and management consulting group. And then Kate, did you want to say hello to everyone and introduce yourself as well?
Hi everyone, I started at Tessitura a couple of weeks ago, and I was previously at South Bank Centre in London, so I might know a couple of people on this call from that capacity as well.
Yes, fantastic. And as I said, we are really glad to be here with you. You know, gosh, this is kind of a pretty interesting moment in time, isn't it? We are in the process of starting to think about these big questions, 2 of which we started to tip off a little bit to you in those polls. We have to all think about challenging our deeply ingrained business as usual thinking. And sometimes this thinking has almost sunk below the level of consciousness. So in order to sort of bring it back up, we're going to take some time today to look at this, to examine some former models of transactional and philanthropic models of membership, because they do represent the beginning of our strategy for reducing churn as membership renewals occur. So what are we going to talk about today? These big questions we want to say. Firstly, what's important to members right now? We always want to have a member-centric approach. So what really is important to them right now? How can we be sure that we are speaking to their values and motivations in what we are calling a transitional period? How do we increase our chances of retaining as many members as possible? And finally, a very big what if question for you and your organization. What if we have a new type of member joining? Now, these questions are so important, and it would be easy to sort of default to our usual positions. Of course, we know what's important to our members. Of course, we speak to their values and motivations. But really, I think it's time to just pause for a moment and get to the heart of the matter that's facing us and why this session in particular is so important. I want to frame this topic of membership churn with a hypothetical and yet provocative question. What would happen if your organization ceased to exist? I want us to sit with this for a few minutes because I think it's what we're all afraid of right now. Hypothetical feels all too real. And friends, what I want to encourage you to think about is that Fearing the answer to this question deprives you of the understanding required to successfully answer our first questions, right? Fear can be paralyzing or it can be very motivating. So if you label this fear, you can then move forward. Fear is playing a really important role on how we're operating right now, and we'll have some more about that later. So this is a huge question, and one that hypothetically, if you've been to any of our workshops before, we pose this regularly in our sessions and workshops, but this is a period unlike any other. It's a scary reality that organizations can't exist in the same capacity that they had previously. There are closures, building closures, there's social distancing, there's licensing restrictions on streaming, and it would be really easy to be overwhelmed during this period of time. So how are we going to start to break down this question and how are we going to move forward? We're going to go back to basics. We're going to start thinking about the usual membership models with some reminders and refreshers. In usual times, we talk about the indispensable emotional satisfaction that your organization delivers to its members and patrons through engagement activities. You've heard us say revenue follows engagement. Well, these activities fall pretty cleanly in usual times into the typical membership models that we are all very familiar with. Transactional and philanthropic, both with very different values and motivations and offering members very different things. Transactional, of course, is mostly focused around getting something in return. You bought a product. Philanthropic is reliant upon someone making a gift to an organization because they care about its success and the impact their gift has on others. These two membership types have been impacted very differently by this crisis, not only in terms of what's important to your members, but also in terms of what you can actually offer to those members. Right now, we feel this transitional period where revenues following engagement, we're talking about seeking to engage our patrons and members for our mutual benefit. Before, in the dark place of this spiral we have, revenue generation was about specific kinds of engagement levers, right? You could add additional performances with additional pre-sale access. You could increase your ticket prices. You could dynamically price your tickets. You could flex the zones in your house, or you could offer more popular programming that you think would be enticing. Well, with the arrival of COVID-19, all that has sort of gone for now. It ceased to exist, in essence, in the capacity that it once was. In a very real sense, in this moment in time snapshot, your organization did end its before state. It ceased the before state because we are well into the during. So where in the past we have had transactional and philanthropic memberships, we now have this blended approach forming. And whether this will exist alongside these models or whether we'll eventually replace these two models entirely, we don't know right now. So that's why your approach to blending these models will vary. With the availability of a transaction model, we're working to elevate more philanthropic elements. Two main factors that we see already to encourage this style of philanthropic engagement from those members who previously preferred a transactional model are, firstly, the organization's place within the local community. What would the local community be without your organization bringing a creative, social, and economic presence to that local landscape? I want you to be thinking about think local, support local. Secondly, I want you to be thinking about a blended approach, being thoughtful about the organization's artistic excellence. What would the artistic community look like without your organization contributing? What would happen to the diversity of programming or the development of the art itself? In this case, I want you to think about the impact on dance without Sadler's or the weakened global understanding of Shakespeare's work without the Globe. So we've just talked through this blended approach. I want to take a minute and turn it over to Kate and have her examine the traditional transactional approach and what it can offer now during these times.
Thanks, Erin. Well, we'll start by looking at transactional memberships. A transactional membership benefit has in the most part been shaped by organisations to give members discounts, special access or priority, usually in direct relation to their live performances or events. So what benefits actually remain now that events have been cancelled? Priority booking, for example, ensures that members are first in line to get a seat to a sellout show. So what do they have priority to if shows aren't actually being put on sale? Discounts are offered to enable them to attend more events per year, with the premise being that they spend the same but attend more. But without shows, or with limited seats to offer at those shows because of social distancing, what discounts are they actually able to access right now? And some memberships provide a tangible financial return, where their initial outlay of membership fees is returned to them through the value of the discounts they receive by being a member. But with limited shows on offer, will this cease to be the case if they renew? Alternatively, for some organisations, benefits are actually linked to the physical space. Members areas, for example, give members priority access to pre-show and interval spaces to help them feel more special. But again, if the venue's closed, how do you give them a members-only area? During closure, many of the aspects of an organisation's offering aren't available anymore, as the physical space is closed or the shows have been cancelled. So, now's the time to pause and ask yourself, why would a member renew now? What are you actually offering them in return when you're asking a member to renew during this time? How's your offering during closure speaking to your members' values and motivations right now? Well, some organisations have acknowledged that their membership offering was altered during closure, and they've grasped this opportunity with both hands. They've revised their benefits to provide a new kind of product offering to fill the gap. Some benefits have become digital. Members now have the ability to access content in their own time, how and when they want to, and from the comfort of their own homes. There's no best seat to fight for online, no queuing to get into the show. For some people, having email digests containing behind-the-scenes interviews or video conferences with directors and curators has actually been invaluable. And for many, this has fulfilled their need in this moment, while they're actually unable to physically attend a performance. We've seen priority access become gated content. Organisations may have restricted access to special digital content so that those who've contributed to their organisations or become members have a digital equivalent of a members area. This means they can provide members-only content and continue to make them feel special. For others, it's become a conversation around future offerings. Provided shows are still being put on sale, with limited capacities to account for social distancing, audiences know there will be a greater demand for the limited tickets that are now being made available. It could be the case that priority access is going to be even more valuable now than before, as it takes less capacity to sell out a socially distant show. We've also seen discounts extend beyond just tickets to products like t-shirts or bags to support organisations during the crisis. Some have offered discounts on memberships purchased for others, with a recommend a friend type offer. And we've seen messaging shift towards their presence within their local community. Some organisations have been pairing up with local suppliers, cafes, bars, shops, and creative spaces that support their values, ensuring the local ecosystem is supported. And this highlights their role as part of a larger local creative network. Now, not everyone is going to see the benefits as enough to remain a member during this crisis. This product offering is not a like for like of what they had before. A large proportion of this new offering relies on your members being philanthropic, acknowledging that your offering has had to adapt to suit the moment we're in, and choosing to renew as a sign of their support. Those who don't have that relationship with your organisation will drop off. But to these people, membership was a product. It was not a relationship that they bought into. These members don't need to be lost forever. You can find a way to identify them in your database so that when your original offering is resumed, you can contact them and ask them to renew then. Use this time to create a renewal campaign to roll out for this group of lapsed members and track renewals in line with that particular activity. As long as their original motivations for becoming a member haven't changed, when your product offering resumes, you may be able to renew them after all. It might take longer than usual to renew these members, but if you recognise them as having been members before this time and continue to engage with them, there's a chance that they might be lapsed and not lost.
So renewal in its essence, is the instance of resuming something after a period of interruption. And what greater interruption than a global pandemic? You know, can this during period, if we go back to our spiral, can it even be considered a period of renewal? Well, if we think about this period as an exception, the loop in the middle of this chart, the renewal for transactional memberships, will actually come for many of you when you come back round full circle and we see your building reopen and your benefits resume. So for existing members, it's a time to recognize them, acknowledge the fact that they were and have been loyal members prior to this, even if their memberships technically lapse. You might even extend their membership for free during closure, but we wouldn't recommend doing this for all members for an entire year, right? Some will be choosing to renew on their own in a sign of support for the organization. They're really just thinking of this as pressing pause. So if revenue follows engagement, we need to make sure that they remain engaged. So if our initial focus was on the transactional membership models, let's talk for a minute now about philanthropic membership models. Fortunately, not a lot has changed in terms of the ways this membership model incorporates the value and motivation of the members who join this type of scheme. Now more than ever, their support is valued. It's a donation-led. They can see clearly the ways that their support benefits the organization. And in some cases where organizations have the staff and the time to offer more personal recognition, calls, thank you calls, and handwritten letters are taking place. So recognition can actually be at an all-time high. So then, why might these renewals be in jeopardy? Well, to put a word on it, fear. Remember at the beginning when we talked about how real our fears feel right now? Well, this fear is translating into some work as well. Sometimes we see that the approach for urgently needed philanthropic support ignores previously strong organizational practices for personalized communication. It may overlook the patron's relationship with the organization, the tenure of that relationship, and even their prior giving history. Now, please don't think that I'm telling you you shouldn't ask for support. You should ask for support. Just don't let fear, urgency, and haste overtake your good judgment and care for patrons in these philanthropic schemes. They are more than just a member.
So it's important to remember that these people are often more to your organization. It might be that their membership relationship is actually tied up in their relationship to you as a ticketed event attendee. If they usually attend quite frequently but have had to stop attending events during closure, their reason for supporting you might have been impacted. It's important that they understand the importance of their membership income, even when you're closed. So consider communicating to them what happens beyond the events that you put on, that they might actually be interested to hear about. If they do attend events, they might have been asked to donate the value of their tickets on top of their membership contribution. Now that we've reached a point of reflection, it might be time to review whether they have received any campaigns around ticket donations that don't actually acknowledge their status as a member. Ticket donation campaigns, amongst other additional asks during this time, likely didn't single out members from other ticketed attendees due to the reactive nature of the campaign. So it might be time to recognise their status with a more personalised message as a follow-up now, giving them the recognition that they need. Recognition is, after all, the primary benefit of the philanthropic model. At a time of crisis, you have to do whatever it takes to keep the ship afloat. You become reactive, you address the issue at hand, and that is the right thing to do. You have to. But as we begin to transition out of this period of reactiveness, it's important to reflect. Be thoughtful on what your strategy is for recognition. How will you say thank you to all of the individuals that supported you, not only when you needed it most right now, but those that have supported you long before this moment too? It's important to review how you've thanked individuals for their contributions during this crisis, and using hindsight, consider whether this has been a proportionate response in the wider context of your other fundraising streams. It comes down to recognition, understanding who your members are and what their relationship is to your organisation, and making sure they know just how much their membership is and will continue to be valued.
So whether an organization began with a transactional or philanthropic membership before the crisis, we seem to have this new type of membership forming during this period of uncertainty, which combines elements of the two. It's mostly digital. Benefits are content driven. There's a focus on supporting the organization as a local asset or for its artistic excellence, or both, during this unprecedented time. This blended approach is about engagement and connection, whether that's with new or existing memberships. It's about focusing on your community, your role within it, and the value that you can bring, even when your primary offering of live performance and art are restricted. It's about valuing the members who choose to support you when faced with the question, what would you do if this organization ceased to exist? So to summarize, we have 5 steps to reduce membership churn. Firstly, acknowledge that this is a transitional period. Know that what you were able to offer before and that you can look to the future and hope that things will one day resume. But right now, what you have here and now is so different than anything you've been able to do before as an organization. What's important for your members before may or may not be what's important to them now, and your product offering might be different too. If you spend time thinking deeply about what this transitional period offers, you'll be able to reduce your churn over time. So if you're thinking about that for your organization too, you have to think about what's changed for your members. What motivates them? What do they value? And why do they consider your membership offering as value to them both before and now? When you think about that, then you want to start thinking about how you're going to revise your offering. What is your blended approach? In light of this being a transitional period and your members' lives changing dramatically, it's important that you think about what is still possible now and how can you bring value to them in their context. Know your place in their lives. Use what you know about your members to engage with them in a way that you may not have done before. Their relationship previously might have been with your shows, your events, the performers you hosted. Right now, without those things, their relationship is with your organization itself. Know what your place is in their lives. What value do they place on you as an organization? Ask yourself, what would they do if your organization no longer existed? Finally, stay present with continued engagement. We've been talking about revenue following engagement. You need to recognize that some members may take longer than normal to renew, and that's okay. That's to be expected. You want to stay in touch with them. Don't let them drop off your lists. Identify those members who have lapsed, and when business resumes, ensure that they've had the engagement and acknowledgement they need to ensure that they are lapsed and not lost. That connection will ultimately reduce churn over the long term. So for us, we're deeply grateful to have spent this time talking with you. We left plenty of time for questions. And so as you're thinking about that, I think we're back over to you, Andrew, to drive the questions.
Correct. Thank you very, very much for that. And as shown on screen, if you have got a question, head down or up, wherever your toolbar is, hit the Q&A and get your questions in there for Erin and Kate. I've got a couple of things straight away. I've got a comment I was just sketching out there, which talking about donating tickets, and I was really pleased this week. I know we've got some sports people on today, that I saw the Hibernian Soccer Club in Edinburgh has cancelled the rest of their season, and they've now said you can get a refund, or we'd really appreciate it if you donate the money. So again, it's that further crossover that sometimes sport and arts think they're so different, but you know, I've got the kind of common strategies and tactics. So that was a good one to see.
Yeah.
I've got a question here about behavior, and really about our behavior as venues or organizations. And I just wonder, we've seen in the UK and across the Atlantic as well, good and bad behaviour from venues, maybe in being nice to their patrons and giving them refunds or not, or credit notes or anything else. I just wondered, did you think that how much our behaviour as venues, or the venues we've got on board today, how much their behaviour during and after the COVID crisis will affect that membership renewal?
Oh, I think it'll have a tremendous effect. You know, it's about the way you make people feel, right? Ultimately, no one wants to engage with organizations that don't make them feel good. We're completely discretionary in that way. They just don't have to come back if it's not an enjoyable, pleasant experience, which speaks to whatever it is that they're trying to do. If they're trying to be entertained, or they're trying to have quality time with their families, or whatever it is. Our behavior as venues, and how we are positioning ourselves as local assets to the creative landscape, for instance, I think matters deeply. I'm going to go to Kate, and then I actually have one other thing to say, but Kate, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is going to be a memorable period of time for everyone. Yeah. So what your role is in their lives at this memorable period of time is going to stay with them. So it's important that you value them, that you respect them, and that you treat them as people during a period that is undoubtedly going to stick in their minds for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, we've started to hear about, in some cases, where venues themselves, the buildings will become the front-footed asset to recovery strategies, for instance. You know, you might not be able to manage socially distant performances, for instance, immediately because of whatever, but you might have a cafe that has some seating outdoors, and so you would be able to start to engage with your potential customers and members, and you know, within that area. And so venues, I think, play a key role, and behavior is a key role for sure.
Superb. Well, we've got two already in questions. We've set up a kind of a habit now of not going to the top one first, so I'll go to the second one.
Okay.
If you have got a question, get it in now. Luke asks, our organization originally agreed to extend memberships for 3 months as a courtesy to members. That's nice. It is likely that we may not be able to continue extending memberships as they're a critical source of income for our theatre. Any suggestion for how to approach shifting our strategy from membership extension to asking for renewals, you know, and a more philanthropic model?
Yes. In my mind, Kate, actually, why don't you answer first, and then I'll tag on.
Yeah, I think reminding yourself that you have already donated the extension in the initial period. So you and yourself have donated something, and your messaging, the way you communicate the need for your organization right now is very important in encouraging someone to then want to support you. And not everyone will have that philanthropic support there. They won't, because they view it as a product, not as a relationship, as we said earlier. And it's trying to change it from a product to a relationship, making them connect with you, making them realize that if you weren't there, what value the organization would have on their lives, what would the void be that's left? And it's not begging them to support you, and it's not putting fear into them saying we will close without you. You don't want to be doing that. But you do want to build a relationship with these people and help them to understand that anything they are able to contribute is going to be put towards keeping you as an organization alive and keeping that relationship going for a long period of time. And it's trying to find out what you can give them back in return, so that it doesn't feel like they're just gifting you money. So find out what is of value to these people, whether it's running a survey, whether it's analysing their past booking history, trying to understand what they want from you as a venue during this time, so that it isn't just them gifting you money. It's a two-way relationship where you're providing a service for them, and in return, they're helping to keep you open, because they're not going to gift you money and keep you open unless you're providing something that they need, whether that's now or whether that's after.
Yeah, I would tag on to that is what you're providing them when you're trying to shift from a transaction to a philanthropic model in this period of time. You're providing them the chance to be part of something important. You're providing them a chance to have belonging in a group of committed supporters who understand the vision for your organization is preserved and going to come out of this different but stronger. You know, it's not thinking through, what Kate said about it's not the desperate tone. The desperate tone, nobody, I'm just going to say this. I don't think that people like feeling like they want to step onto a sinking ship. And so when you are thinking about moving from transaction to philanthropic, you are providing them an opportunity to join in a cause is how I would think about transitioning that. There was one other thing. Oh, the most important part of a philanthropic membership scheme is its case for support. And a case for support is a compelling statement of vision and relevance. And if you are starting to think about a philanthropic membership scheme, you really have to understand the vision and the relevance that your organization has in this moment and actually moving forward. So I think if between providing them a sense of belonging and really having a great, compelling statement of vision that you want to bring people into, I think those are your first steps in making the transition.
Superb. Thank you for that. There's one coming here which I'm going to dive to the bottom from Michelle, and it says, is it possible to poll how many organizations have invested in exclusive events online for members? These take a lot of resources, and many staff are on furlough or put on leave, so it'd be good to understand if they are valued by members and worth investment. Now, we have to set polls up in advance, but if you go into the Q&A, can you give a thumbs up to Michelle's question if you're investing in exclusive events or content for online members? So head into Q&A, give Michelle's question a thumbs up if your organization is investing. That's the best we can do on that poll. Anonymous, not the hacking group. Anonymous.
Hang on. Can I, let me just challenge one, well, no, you'll report the poll and then we'll go back. Sorry. Go, please continue. My mistake.
You're welcome. Anonymous, not the hacking group, an attendee, said, what if you have not set up a membership scheme? So I'm not renewing, I'm starting up and looking to do so moving forward. What advice would you give to encourage customers, all of which are new, to sign up to a membership as they purchase a ticket? They may not have disposable income, and other than discounted memberships, is asking for a philanthropic sign up enough? So tips on starting new memberships.
And it's not in, can you say, there's not a transactional membership scheme set up right now? Is that the?
Yes, correct, yeah, from how I read it.
Yeah, well, I think I'd go back to that case for support. I think that when you are thinking about a philanthropic membership scheme, and I think that part of that question was around, is asking for a philanthropic sign-up enough? It is. I think that the kind of benefits that you can still provide in a philanthropic access scheme actually goes back to the question that Michelle asked about exclusive events for certain levels of donors. We have seen, I'm kind of blending my answers here, but yes, the answer is that a philanthropic sign-up is enough. And exclusive events for donors online are generally coming alongside what kinds of things do they want. So if what a donor is looking for from a philanthropic side is access to interesting commentary from the creative folks, you can offer them a way to interact with you via a Zoom call. I mean, we're seeing a lot of that happening in the States, where executive directors or artistic directors or dancers even are just sort of opening their own creative access to groups of different people. Kate, I bet you're going to say something else around the right product and the right time and how you think about things, because you tend to go into
it's bringing it back down to the idea of segmentation. It's you can't just lump all of your people into one pool. You have to work out what the right product is for the right person, and philanthropic models will not be seen as beneficial to all of the people that buy a ticket from you. It won't, because some people don't derive that pleasure from gifting, or they don't derive it from gifting to you. They might gift to someone else, and that's where they're choosing to put their philanthropy at that moment in time. So it's knowing what is the product that's going to work for that particular individual, and that comes down to knowing why they're buying a ticket from you in the first place. What is the benefit they get from attending your particular venue or event or organization? And how do you then enhance that a little bit more to make it slightly more special, to make someone willing to pay for that enhancement? And if that enhancement is philanthropic because they feel like they're supporting and they are a part of your greater mission, then that's philanthropic model. If it's about enhancing the experience by giving them access to somewhere in your site that nobody else gets to go, or allowing them to use a bar that doesn't have a queue, then that is understanding what is considered the additional benefit that encourages someone to promote from being a standard ticket buyer to that slightly uplifted version of member. And it's working out for your organization, what is that cost-effective uplift if it can't be philanthropic.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Okay, we had some people saying they couldn't see Michelle's question. I've given it a thumbs up, so I can see that, and someone else has as well. But remember, there's that poll, that's that question that Michelle asked. Give it a thumbs up if you're investing in exclusive events online for members. We'll see if we can get an answer on that one. Question's gone to the top of the pile from Anthony Esposito, current chairman of INTIX. If you haven't checked out INTIX, International Ticketing Association, intix.org. They have some great content on there as well. They're part of a 3-day ticketing summit this week. Great work going on there. Anyway, Anthony is from the Atlanta Braves baseball team in Atlanta, Georgia. Not really a question, he says, a comment. Aside from update emails and phone calls, we've had success engaging members during this time with manageable Zoom meetings. Take a service rep or two and set them up on a meeting with 4 or 5 new members, getting to know each other, help them answer questions. Most importantly, to let them know that they're important and valued to us during this time. And even though they've never actually attended one of our events as a member. What a really great piece of engagement there.
Yeah, we're finding that the resources and investment in exclusive events, we tend to think of that as how do we track it and how do we do it. It can literally be a group of 10 people who've been emailed and invited to come and have a little chat, have coffee with whomever, to sort of get the idea that that connection still exists, that you are still there, you are still present in their lives. That's really important in this time.
And it's actually really mutually beneficial to the organization too, because I don't know if anyone out here has done research themselves internally, but trying to get qualitative research from a group of people is actually quite costly. So being able to get a group of people in a Zoom meeting like that who are willing to talk to you quite openly is going to be so valuable to your organization, to know what they do want from you and what they do respect and value from you. And a lot of organizations would pay a lot of money for that kind of research. So it's a two-way benefit there as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen it too, just in our organization, right? We've started a stream of arts and culture connection, which is open to everyone. And the value that is coming through those sessions has just been immeasurable, to how we are thinking about what it is that we need to provide. And so that idea of it's almost like a focus group where you didn't have to pay the external venue to host you and give them coffee, and yeah.
Good, excellent. Thank you, Anthony, for that question. Again, that's intix.org, the International Ticketing Association. So if you haven't checked that out, go and do that. Michelle's getting some thumbs up. Again, we're waiting thumbs up on Michelle's question. If you've created exclusive events for members, we've got some comments there from Richard as well. So we'll go to Natalie's question, then come back to Michelle's question about exclusives. Natalie says, during our check-in with members, we realised that certain members are going through a difficult personal and family situation. So on behalf of the org, we wish them all the best and remain available if we can help and be a listener, and left it there. Do you have any suggestions on when it's appropriate time to reach back out and resume that conversation? We obviously didn't ask for renewal because of what they're going through. So, I mean, we're planning a webinar on this actually with a couple of fundraisers about when's the right time to reach back out. And then, because we know, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you as a member or as a donor. So any ideas on when would be the right time to reach back out?
Not sure what the other fundraisers on your webinar are going to say, but I would tell you my personal approach, which is to be human first. If what they said to you elevated your concern for their well-being, and you feel like you are in a dialogue and relationship with them beyond that you are coaching them towards giving you money, that style of engagement and that being human is what I would first look to. When we talked in our presentation, we talked about how the lapsed period is longer than we normally might think. And, are they lapsed or are they lost? And I don't know if their difficult personal and family situation has an end date, right? I mean, it will have an end date, but you hope that all will be well and that they will come back to you. And it goes back to how we make people feel during this time. And, if you have the time and the concern and the bandwidth and the devotion to them as in that relationship, then I would say be human first. Kate, did you want to add anything?
I think just that this is such an unusual time.
Yeah.
And so allowing people to be slightly different in this time, allowing them the extra moment, allowing them that extra time before they get in touch with you necessarily. And it might be a case of you putting the ball in their court and you saying, I completely understand the situation you're in, get in touch with us if you need anything. And then it's a case of you kind of let it lie for a while, unless you can open that dialogue, as Erin says. If you are on that personal level, if they have opened up to you and they are engaging with you in a two-way conversation, then you've got that opportunity to converse with them. But if it's a one-way dialogue, then I think it's a case of waiting for them to get in touch with you until there's been enough time passed, that this unusual period that is happening for a lot of people right now has passed, and you're back to that kind of after that loop. The loop has happened on that time period.
I might also suggest that you not expire their membership, that you not drop them off of your your membership lists, that you remain treating them as a member, you keep that language between the two of you ongoing, because the last thing that you want to do is be inviting people to join your membership scheme and pretend like they weren't members before, right? You really want to be very conscious within a blended approach to maintain language that allows you the easiest route back into either the transactional or the philanthropic models. And so I understand you didn't ask now, but at scale, when we're talking about an at scale kind of approach, I think you want to maintain your language for really as long as you can, and again, develop that case for support, develop that thinking to blend the two approaches together.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point going back to our conversations before we went live, Erin, when you were talking about your experience of buying baseball tickets. You know, as a baseball fan, you know, we've all been the other side of the fence or the barrier, and been the consumer. So how would you feel now if you got bombarded with messages by the Cubs having told them about your some issues you were having, and then got bombarded in a week? So I think we can apply how we feel as consumers to our thinking.
Yeah, for sure. You know, just to extend that, I miss baseball so much. I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, and I'm still high from us having won the World Series in 2016. So like, I'm just, it's just it's a real passion for me. And, you know, we miss things. We miss these things in our lives. And I'm still reading all of the little tidbits and old stories that they're really recycling. ESPN, which is a television network, just played Game 7 of the 2016 World Series on Sunday. And my whole family watched it. I mean, if you take the analogy of, you know, that which you feel passionately about, you're looking for opportunities to engage with it. I would be crushed if somehow my fan status had expired just because there isn't baseball right now. Like, that's not my fault. So I think if we think of things in those ways and get a little bit more member-centric, what do they value right now? Getting back to our big questions and the takeaways that we offered, I think there's a lot to learn there.
Superb. Right, we're going to circle back round. We're going to ignore Anthony saying that he thinks the Atlanta Braves are better than the Chicago Cubs, because we know that's not true. And we're going to go back to Michelle's big question that people have been commenting on. And her question was, have people done exclusive event for members? There's a whole, I'm not going to read them, there's a whole bunch of comments in there, so I think attendees can go into there and read those comments. 5 thumbs up. You know, is it really worth, Erin, Kate, is it really worth it, creating an online event?
It comes down to what your members want from you. If they aren't going to engage with the content, don't create it. It's not going to be of value to them. But if there's a way that you can open up a dialogue, encourage that two-way communication and engage with them through something, then it's knowing what is it that's going to get the highest engagement. And that might be a case of you going through your previous social media content and working out which had the highest engagement ratings, and work out actually the video with an interview that cost us absolutely nothing to produce was the highest engaged piece of content we've ever created. Or it might be that it was a video stitched together from clippings of your season. So do a new season highlight and give people an anticipation of what's to come when you reopen. So it's using the metrics you have available to you now to work out what it is that was of value to people before, and then test the water with whether or not it's something that they might want now. But I wouldn't rule it out completely, but I also wouldn't just start digging through the archives and finding old digital recordings of performances that you've had buried away and putting them online just for the sake of it. I would definitely take the time to understand what is of value, because there's so much noise out there at the moment in terms of people posting content out on the internet. So it's finding out what is actually going to connect with people.
You know,
Erin, can I come in with an answer? Because I mean, we had TPC conference runs in March. Most of you probably may know that. You know, we got postponed. The one thing we work on all year got postponed by a year. And it was about 4 weeks ago when I got up and just thought, I wonder if a few people had asked for online content. Are we doing anything? And I created a survey and went out, do people want it? I had over 100 responses within 24 hours. We started to put this together, and we're now 3,200 registrations for this series, over 1,000 individuals, of which 650 had never been to a TPC before. So, you know, not only have we given something back to our existing people, we've actually grown. And I think sometimes we lose the sense sometimes that these crises give us an opportunity to possibly broaden our reach, not just serve that membership base. So that's my personal touch on that one.
Yeah, and when you think about what Kate talked about in our presentation with you know, ticket donors who have been thanked, so, you know, people who have donated their tickets back, who have been thanked so enthusiastically in the moment. Is that your pool of people who might eventually also transition into a blended approach? Is that your pool? How can you think about them differently in that moment? You think about an opportunity that this offers us. It really does allow us to experiment with different forms. And one of the things that Kate and I were talking about was if we wanted to, if we thought, or maybe I was talking about you, Andrew, if we thought that this blended, what we called it in our presentation was a blended approach, because we don't think that there's enough information yet for us to know that this is a new blended model. At this moment, we're only comfortable saying that in the transitional period, it's a blended approach. There may be a time when all this is the reality that we have, and you can reach all the people, all that reach that you just talked about, Andrew, you can reach all of them all the time through a blended approach. So yeah. Kate,
and we know, we know as well that some people may not go back to theatre, particularly older generations who are starting to see this fear of kind of group spaces, of events where they're going to be in close proximity to people, even after this period is potentially starting to move over. So there could even be a platform that fills that void for those individuals who were engaged with you before, but unless you've used this time to test the waters on it, you won't know if that's something that people would want going forward. So it's a trial period, I suppose. It's acknowledging that we are in this moment now and seeing where it takes us.
Yeah, so true, so true.
Absolutely superb. Well, on that positive note, I think we're going to probably wrap it up because we're coming up on the hour. Thank you so much, and it's been a really great one of a few webinars where we've really crossed that divide between performing arts and sports and entertainment and attractions, because too often we think ourselves in silos, and we're really sharing some great knowledge here. So thank you very much for that. Coming up tomorrow, folks who are still on, 2 p.m, Lucy Costello's got a really great presentation from TicketSolve on online donations. Bruce Mayhew, if you're managing teams remotely, Friday, 2 o'clock. But all it remains for me to do is thank you very much, Erin and Kate, for today. It's been absolutely superb. And to all of you attending, thank you so very, very much. And we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.